The next type of components we're going to talk about are wells, and we create wells by adding the well class to a div element. Wells create a kind of stylistic separation between that div element and the rest of our web page. You'll see what I mean in a moment, but first it's worth pointing out that we can add two additional optional classes to a well. These classes are the well-lg class, which indicate a large well, as well as a well-sm class that indicates a small well. And one type of CSS styling that we may want to apply to wells ourselves is something called the box shadow property. And by adding box shadow to our well class, it'll create kind of a 3D look to it, depending on the type of box shadow that we want to add. Now, the box shadow property is definitely non-trivial, and it takes some playing around with to get right, but I would encourage you to take a look at it in the W3 documentation, and if you do decide to use wells, it may be a very important property to get familiar with. So let's go to our browser to see how our well looks both with and without our box shadow. We begin without the box shadow, and I'd say they look perfectly well without it. It gets the job done, and we can see that clear separation of this div element from the rest of our web page. Now let's refresh our browser to see what it looks like with the box shadow. And we can see how that box shadow kind of gives it a 3D pop out of the screen type look. I'm a big fan of this, and in fact I'm even a big fan of making the background of my well white in order to make it an even more subtle separation. But of course, feel free to apply your own styles to these well elements.